Hey people, it's me, Marc Maron. Before you enjoy the 300th episode, that's right, isn't that fucking amazing? 300 episodes of WTF. I can't believe it. But I wanted to hip you to some dates I'm doing in the very near future. If you're in the Chicago area, August 2nd through 5th, I will be at the Main Stage Theater. For info on those shows, go to Mainstage, MAYNESTAGE.com. There's a lot of shows, a lot of tickets. Go grab some. It's going to be fun. If you're in the Utah area, I will be at Wise Guys August 11th. 2 shows only, Saturday night. Go to wiseguyscomedy.com for info on that. And August 8th, I will be in San Francisco at Cobb's Comedy Club for a benefit for ACC Animal Shelter with Arj Barker. So that's August 8th. Go to cobbscomedyclub.com for info on that. Now enjoy the 300th episode of WTF.
Lock the gate!
Are we doing this? Really? Wait for it. Are we doing this? Wait for it.
Ow!
What the fuck?
WTF.
And it's also, what the fuck? What's wrong with me? It's time for WTF.
What the fuck?
With Marc Maron.
Okay, let's do this. What the fuckers? What the fuck buddies? What the fucking ears? What the fuck nicks? What the fucking knots? What the fuckaholics? What the fuckaricans? What the fuckamullins? What the fuckanucks? What the fuckstables? What the fuckasaurs? All right. The list goes on. It goes on. 300 episodes. 300 episodes of WTF I have put out into the world. This is the 300th one. So I haven't quite put 300 out yet. By the time you finish this, it will be 300. This is a monumental moment, because it is has 2 zeros at the end of it. I had to think a lot about how I was going to do this episode. Some of you were expecting like, oh, it's going to be he's going to interview somebody that was dead. He's going to get Bill Hicks on the show. Richard Pryor is going to be on WTF on the 300th episode. Lorne Michaels will come out special to come to my garage. The truth of the matter is there are no interviews necessarily that would be a 300th episode. All my interviews are special in their own right. This is not necessarily or in any way a celebrity-driven show. It is a conversation show. That is my way of telling you that. Lower your expectations in terms of the big get for the 300th, because that's not the way it's going to go. But the truth of the matter is that this is my 300th episode, and where I'm at today is much different than where I was at when I started this show. I had no fucking idea, folks. I had no idea that this would become what it has become. I had no idea that I would be a small business owner. That was not part of my plan. And it's weird because of where I'm at now with the podcast, because the podcast has become popular and has become profitable to a degree. It's pretty exciting that this thing has taken off. It's exciting that it's successful and it does make money. It was a medium that people weren't making money in before. And I have to be honest with you, I have found sort of a thrill in making some money off of this thing. I never understood the entrepreneurial spirit. I never understood what they talk about when they say invest in small business or you should do your business at a mom and pop shop. It wasn't until I owned a mom and pop shop, me being the pop and maybe one of my cats being the mom, but there is a pride to it. I do feel like I'm putting out something that is unique, and I'm proud of it, and it speaks from my heart, and that people dig it. And any money I get from that, I feel like it's an honest dollar. But I did get an interesting email that I want to share with you at the beginning of the show, just to quell any fears. I don't know if they were fears, but this was an interesting take on something and was provocative to me because I wouldn't have thought about it this way. Dear Mark, and this the subject line says, a conservative fan. Dear Mark, I just listened to your Gilda's Laugh Fest episode, and I just had to write you about your political comments during that show. I've been listening to your podcast for a while, and every so often you'll tell us your political views. I'd like to bring you over to the dark side, but I know that quoting Milton Friedman or pointing out that you are a living, breathing, Randian capitalist superhero who pioneered a new artistic medium simultaneously while inventing a new business model won't sway you. But I know what will eventually convince you that capitalism is the only ethical political system giving you money. I just bought a bunch of merch on your website. Your show is great, and I'm a huge fan. Good luck on the new TV show, John. I don't know that I'd consider myself a Randian capitalist or whether or not I would go along with any sort of a Milton Friedman-esque analysis of my show. But I am, given what I come from and given what I came from, I'm very happy to be making money. But, don't be so quick to call me a conservative. I'm not in that tax bracket, my friend, but I appreciate the input. So what are we going to do on this show? I decided to talk about, where I'm at now with the show, and also to bring guests in that reflect where the show is at and where it's come from to some degree. On this show today, I'm going to get on the phone with Nathan Rabin from the Onion AV Club, who's been very supportive of the medium of podcasting and certainly supportive of my show. I'm going to have a conversation with Jesse Thorne, who is the host of Bullseye, and he's the king of the Maximum Fun podcast network. And he started me in this racket in a lot of ways. He set me up here, and I owe him for that. He doesn't seem to think I owe him as much as I think I owe him, but he did teach me how to use my microphones. And then I thought it would be interesting to talk to a podcaster who was inspired by my podcast to start his own. And for that, I chose Pete Holmes. And some of you know my relationship with Pete. Some of you know how deeply and genuinely Pete annoys me. He's a funny guy. He's a bright guy. And not unlike many of my shows, having Pete in here to talk about how I influenced him or inspired him to do a podcast or steal mine, as he says, does provide a little bit of that tension that you've all grown to love and expect, from a Marc Maron guest. Did I just say my name in the third person? I believe I did. And then finally, I'm going to talk to Andy Kindler, who I love and who I've loved forever. For as long as I remember doing comedy after seeing Andy Kindler, I've always loved Andy Kindler. We've had our ups and downs, but I got to be honest with you. Out of all the cats in my immediate world, Andy Kindler loves my show. And he talks to me about it. He loves listening to it. So I thought that I would interview a member of my community that just loves the show and talk to him about that. So that's the plan for this show. But I want to assuage some fears and talk about where I'm at. I think the show is going well. I think that it has gotten into a groove that has grown well beyond me. And I want to tell you a couple of things that I do that you might not know I do. One is that, I love almost every interview I do, and I honestly learn something from almost every interview I do. And I can tell you moments that have changed my life from these conversations. And I'll be honest with you. Once I have the conversation with the person in the garage or on the road or wherever I have that, I rarely, if at all, listen to the completed podcast. My memory is of the conversation I had with a human being. And a lot of times people come up to me and they say things like, that thing you said to what's his name in episode 12, I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I got to remember that. So my experience remains human. I rely on my memory. That's how I hold these conversations. So a lot of times I will get things, like a lesson I learned from Stuart Lee about audiences, or something I learned from Sarah Benincasa about parents. I'm always listening, for a new perspective on comedy, on life, on art, on existing in the world and trying to get by. And these conversations have changed my life. And I know that a lot of you have been changed by them. And I completely appreciate that. And it was far beyond anything I knew would happen with this show. I get hundreds and hundreds of emails from people who express their gratitude for how much this show has helped them through a dark time, changed their perspective on things, help them manage a drinking or drug problem, or help them, wake up to what comedy is capable of, or treat their peers better, or their spouses better. But another thing that I've learned to do in doing this show is that I no longer care as much about my experience in the conversation. It took a couple of hundred episodes for me to realize that if I walk away from a conversation with a guest that I didn't feel like my emotional needs are met, or I didn't feel like I got to something, or I should have done it this way or should have done it that way, that I don't really talk about that with you guys, because it's my experience. And you're going to have your experience with the conversation. I know a lot of times I'm speaking to people that you people have relationships with, either through media or through their work. And just the experience of hearing them talk is something that you wouldn't have heard before. So I don't bring my baggage to you in that way. I wanted you to know that that, if you think I'm selfish or self-involved or this is all about me, it really isn't. That I guess I'm tooting my own horn in that I'm keeping some shit to myself, and I want you to know that. So in that way, and in many other ways, this show remains vital to me because my heart has opened up over the arc of these 300 episodes, and I'm very able to listen, to care, to laugh, to be there for somebody else in these conversations and in my life, and that would not have happened without this show. And I don't see it as diminishing at all. I know some of you have expressed some fear or some worry that perhaps that if I get content or if I become happier, that there's going to be a problem with the output of the show, that maybe I'll lose my edge if I find any peace of mind or contentment or happiness or money. I just don't see that as a threat. We all have good periods and bad periods, and previous to this show, I'd had some good periods. They may not have lasted long, but I had them. And also you should take in mind that I am on the precipice of something that I've never been before. I've never sold tickets as a stand-up comic previous to the WTF reality. I'm writing a book that I'm very nervous about because I'm very busy and I want to put the right amount of time into it. I wrote a book before, but the stakes were not as high. Some of you know, most of you, that because of this show, not only do I now sell tickets, but I've gotten an opportunity from IFC to make 10 episodes of a scripted half-hour comedy based on my life. I've never had that experience before. I've never, been in this position before to do that. Who knows what's going to happen? What I'm telling you now is just because I may have this brief interlude of happiness and engagement and finally arriving at a place where not only is my art or my comedy in a good place, in the best place it's ever been, but now I have opportunities that I never had before. So you should know enough about me to know that that's making me a bit anxious and a bit frightened. But I'll tell you one thing that's gone. I'm not going to fuck it up on purpose. I'm not going to let the part of me that likes to fuck things up to protect myself do that. But I don't know what's going to happen. And knowing that, there's no reason that I couldn't spiral down into a mess. It's not out of the question that I could fuck everything up. But one thing I can tell you now, having done this show for so long, having done it for 300 episodes and having grown, as a person with this show and with you listeners, is that I think that if it doesn't work out the way I want it to, or if everything does go wrong, or if the worst happens, if the worst that could happen happens, that I can probably handle it and I can cope with it and I can adjust to it and I can accept it, because that is something I was never able to do, any of those things, without beating the shit out of myself, judging other people, or making it worse. And all of that happened because of this show, because you people enjoyed this show and because people wanted to talk to me. And I'm thrilled that you people love this show, and I'm thrilled about this 300 episode. And now I'm going to talk to some other people about WTF and about, where we go from here and where it fits into the world. Like, I don't really think past this microphone. I know there's a lot of you out there, but I don't think about that number. I don't always think about, what you want or what you don't want. I stay in the moment as much as I can. And a lot of times I don't have a clear idea of how it affects people until I start hearing from you, which I appreciate. I just want to hear some outside input as to, what WTF means, what it means to others, what it means in a cultural context. And I think that the best way to do that, right now is to go to this phone conversation I had with Nathan Rabin over at the Onion AV Club. Nathan Rabin. Am I pronouncing it right?
Yes, very much so.
I've never talked to you in my life, but God knows we have a relationship.
Yeah, I was not previously aware of that.
Well, I'm assuming that you are obviously aware of my work, and I too of yours. So, in my mind, that's a relationship.
Oh, totally. And I think you kind of have a relationship with everybody who listens to your podcast. but I feel like it's sort of an inherently one-sided relationship where everybody knows everything about you. You a little bit less so about everybody who listens to you.
But oddly, a little bit more so about you, at least what you offer me through your writing. But you are absolutely right in that I do find that my fans approach me with a very deep and almost sometimes troubling notion of who I am.
Oh, totally. And I'm kind of a bit of a grotesque emotional exhibitionist. At least I was in my memoir.
Yeah.
So anybody who's read my book knows everything about me. Yeah, other people a little bit less so.
So what would you say your position is over there? Are you like in terms of the AV Club? I consider you the main guy. Can I call you the main guy?
Well, that is incredibly kind, and also incredibly inaccurate, and that I'm the head writer. So I kind of control the things that I write, and not so much what other people write.
But does that mean that you look over other people's stuff and say maybe you should do this, this isn't happening, and that kind of thing?
No, it's not like 30 Rock at all. I think I'm the head writer solely because they don't want to let me near anybody else's prose. I like to say that I'm celebrating 13 years without a promotion. I'm the only person who has never been made an editor, and that's because I'm a product of the Chicago public school system. So my grammar and my spelling and everything else related to the English language is pretty terrible.
Is it?
Yeah, apparently. I think until it's sort of like, polished and buffered and like made palatable for public consumption.
I have the same problems. I have the same problems. I think I got good ideas and I can execute them, but what happens in between the larger words is not necessarily the right words to use in terms of just simple stuff, grammar and whatnot.
Oh, totally. And my wife, I just got married. She was an English teacher, so she has a much greater grasp of pretty much everything relating to the English language than I do, which can be a little bit humbling at times.
Well, I understand. It sounds like you married the right woman.
Oh, definitely. I definitely married the right woman. Yeah, we actually just got married 2 weeks ago.
Congratulations.
So it's kind of new in my mind. So yeah, thank you very much.
Well, you've been a tremendous supporter of the medium of podcasting, and certainly a supporter of mine, which I appreciate. When was the first time that you started listening to podcasts? I mean, was it before WTF?
I think it might have been just before WTF. I remember the first podcast that I really listened to was Never Not Funny, and then Comedy Death Ray, I guess it was called at the time, and that was kind of an entryway into WTF. And yeah, I remember just listening to WTF for the first time and sort of feeling this sort of visceral truth that is so incredibly rare anywhere in pop culture, and it just kind of opened this world to me where it was okay to talk about the darkness in the world. It was okay to talk about the ugly side of humanity, and I think because you were so incredibly open about just kind of like exposing your scars, exposing your ugliness to the world, it sort of made me, and I would imagine all of your listeners, feel a little bit better about our own ugliness, made us feel a little less alone, made us feel a little less alienated and detached from the world around us.
Well, I'm flattered, and I certainly appreciate that, and I think that. Yeah, that wasn't what I wrote down. That wasn't the list of things I wanted to do when I started the podcast, but I'm certainly glad it has that effect. Like when people say things like that, I'm so glad that people find comfort in what I'm doing. But it's interesting, when I started it, all I wanted to do was get myself out there. I felt like I felt that my voice was valid, and that whatever I'd done in my life to get me onto a mic, that was what I would bring to it. And it's very odd, because I don't think that how I talk or how I engage is necessarily unusual. But as I do it more, I realize that there is sort of a craving for some sort of organic conversation, and also just frank conversation. And I think people, that's always been the way I've talked to people, which might speak to why I don't have a lot of close friends. It's draining in a way.
Right. Well, I think part of it is, you listen to a talk show, especially a television talk show, sort of people sort of engaging in socially mandated charades. The host is pretending to be interested in the guest, so that they can get, 8 minutes of television and the guest can promote their product. And you never get that sense with WTF. You never get the sense that you're interested in somebody as an entertainer or as somebody with something to move. You get the sense that you're interested in humanity, and you're interested in your shared humanity. You're interested in where you overlap. You're interested in where you clash. You're interested in kind of how you can see the world from such kind of antithetical places, yet share this thing that everybody shares, which is being human.
Well, I think that's the best I can do. I think that because of this medium, it wasn't going to happen anywhere else. Now, when you talk about and you listen to a lot of podcasts, and I know you've gotten onto Gil Martin's, and there's a lot of podcasting going on. I mean, what do you think you've stated some of what you think about the importance of the medium, but what do you think in the broad sense, outside of my podcast? This was the first time I think that any of us have really witnessed. We all sort of thought that the internet, in terms of creating new things or having some sort of explosion of content that was unique, was probably behind us. And now, we see it happening in a very big way with podcasts. So where do you see the medium going?
Well, I think that's an interesting question. I think kind of the medium right now is at sort of a crossroads where there are people like yourself and Comedy Bang Bang who are kind of sort of leveraging the enormous popularity and visibility of your podcast into television shows and to different things. I know Nerdist just had a couple of specials on the BBC. So I think it's a very interesting sort of crossroads where it's sort of like stand-up comedy in the 1980s, where it can be a means to an end. It can be a way of getting your name out there. It can be a way of getting your own television show. But it can also be an art form in its own sense. And I feel like that's one of the things that your podcast has illustrated, that podcasting is an art form in and of itself, that it's connected to stand-up comedy, it's connected to sketch comedy, it's connected to talk shows, but it also has this sort of freedom and this sort of intimacy and this sort of openness, especially at this point, where there aren't a lot of people making a great deal of money off of it, where there aren't a lot of rules. There isn't necessarily like this rigid hierarchy, and the cost of entry is very, very low. You can just kind of get some mics, get some bandwidth, and then put something up there. So I think as it gets older, as it evolves and develops, I think it's going to grow more sophisticated. I think some of the wildness, some of the unruliness, some of the intensity that sort of characterized the early days will be lost a little bit. But I also think that we're going to see, new and amazing and exhilarating forms of expression, and I'd like to think that there's a Marc Maron, not a Marc Maron, but somebody like Marc Maron, who's disgruntled and frustrated and just wants to communicate who they are to the universe, who's going to be starting a podcast, next year or the year after that, or, the year after that, that will completely change the way people think about podcasting and what the medium can do and what it's capable of.
Yeah, I wish I had time to go find that person. Look, there are thousands of podcasts out there. Some of them are inconsistent. Some of them are 5 minutes long. But I wonder if the audience of podcasts, I wonder if people have that same drive to go out and find that, that piece of vinyl by a small record company of a guy that was on his, losing his mind, and that record is amazing. I just wonder if without publicity, that those sort of diamonds in the rough, or those people that might be at the end of their rope, I could see it happening in retrospect, that, 5 years from now, there are 10 podcasts that somebody unearths and says, no one was listening to this guy, and it was Jesus. So
right.
But do you think that there is a curiosity there? I just wonder about the curiosity, because I think that in some ways podcasting has gotten a bad rap, in that, like, people will try one and they'll be like, oh God, the mics were horrible, this was horrible, that it seems that slightly polished, at least personalities, seem to be rising above the fold, and the smaller podcasts seem to be struggling a bit.
Well, look at WTF. You were not a giant, massive cultural figure when WTF started out. You definitely had a name. You were definitely respected.
Right.
People definitely followed your stand-up. You wrote a book that was fantastic. But you were not somebody where people like Ricky Gervais, people would just check out a podcast because you were involved. But your podcast developed through word of mouth, through these kind of landmark episodes, through these water cooler episodes that everybody talked about, the Carlos Mencias, the Dane Cooks. So it was able to kind of spread virally, and without, you taking out ads or anything like that. So I'd like to think that that's going to continue to happen with podcasts. Another thing that's nice about podcasting is it's awfully incestuous. So you kind of have the same people on podcast after podcast after podcast. But that's also a nice way for new podcasts to make a name, for people who have power, who have leverage, who have appeal, to kind of pay it forward, to kind of give a heads up to other podcasts. And that's something that you can definitely do via yours. I mean, there are definitely people who are going to check out a podcast because somebody was a guest on WTF. Like, you have that power and you have that freedom. And obviously, it's good to have, these huge guests that everybody is interested in. But one of the things that's great about your podcast is you still have, your Big J Okersons. You still have these people who will be, completely unknown to a lot of the public, and you can still, kind of be part of this community that supports itself and supports each other and that is constantly ever growing.
I think that the podcast has, brought our community closer in some weird way. I get a lot of comics that come up to me and go, it's almost a way to check in with their peers as to what's going on. And I'm finding that a lot of comics, don't really know each other as well as, they're familiar with each other. Most of the time, I don't know them that well. And it sort of, I think, becomes sort of a community bonding agent. And I'm sort of thrilled about that.
Totally. Well, that Chuck D had that famous line about hip-hop being CNN for black folks. And I think you can kind of extend the analogy and sort of say that WTF and podcasts in general, your You Made It Weirds, your Mental Illness Happy Hours, your Nerdist, those are kind of CNN for comedians and for stand-up comics. And I think one of the things that's interesting and valuable is you've given this sort of very intimate glimpse into this sort of insular and kind of hermetic community to people who would never even think about, going to an open mic or, trying their hand at stand-up, but have this sort of deep reverence for Largo, who have this deep reverence for, these somewhat, minor figures because you talk about it loving and appreciative and kind of thorough sort of way. I kind of feel like one of the values of these 300 episodes of WTF is that taken together, they're kind of this fantastic oral history of the stand-up comedy, from 1960 to the present. And another thing that's amazing is, so several of your guests have died, but people know them better because you spoke to them, because, you got under their skin, because they got under your skin, because you had a real connection. I mean, I feel I know and appreciate Patrice O'Neill and his legacy a lot more because you guys talked, because you had an amazing conversation that I wouldn't really know him just from, the 3 minutes I see him on, Tough Crowd or him doing like a stand-up set on Conan. You can kind of reveal yourself in a way that you can't on WTF, that you can't, in other mediums.
So what do you want me to do, Nathan? Like, as a fan of the show and as somebody's on, where would you like WTF to go now?
That's a good question. I mean, I guess kind of sort of the WTF that I love, that I embraced kind of initially, kind of explores a lot of these sort of more obscure, kind of random sort of nooks and crannies of the comedy world. I guess the Bob Zamuda episode was a really good example of something that, not a huge name to a lot of people, but my God, what a fascinating story. And I also liked that it went really, really long. I tend to like episodes that go well over an hour long. So, yeah, if you can get Shecky Green, that would be absolutely fantastic. And again, just these people that you don't know.
Well, I've got one coming up that that I can't wait to do, and then it's right in that wheelhouse, man. I got a guy named Bob Golub coming up, because I'm like you. I mean, those conversations with those kind of guys, they're to me, they're always the most exciting and mind blowing ones, because they don't have a necessarily a public personality in place, so you're not fighting against a life script that or a career that needs to be protected necessarily. And this guy was you're going to love that one. Okay, well, I'll definitely take that advice. I'm actually thinking about interviewing my optometrist, who's a jazz saxophone player, Jewish guy. He's an optometrist in this Latino neighborhood who grew up in somewhere in Wisconsin, where his father owned a pharmacy, and he became a bebop jazz saxophone player.
That's awesome. And again, that's the kind of thing you can do now when I feel like your audience trusts you. They trust you implicitly. that kind of gives you a blank check of, we trust you, we trust your judgment, we know that no matter where you're going to take us, it will be someplace worthwhile. So, my God, that is really exciting, and I very much look forward to both an episode like that and episodes, of a similar vein.
Well, thank you, Nathan. Thank you for supporting me and spending your time here with me today. And I will forge forward. I will forge forward and try to find those nooks and crannies.
Cool. I very much appreciate that. When you come to Chicago in August, please stop by the office. We'd love to treat you to lunch.
So we did all right? You feel good about it? Anything you want to add? We good?
No, we're definitely very, very good.
All right. Thank you, Nathan.
Awesome. Thank you.
Bye.